We're heading into week 11 fantasy football, guys, and here's the thing. We've got some guys coming back from bye weeks. We've got Tyreek Hill back. We've got AJ Brown back. We've got some serious studs back, and also might have some very key injured players coming back just in time for your big playoff push in fantasy football. So today, we need to go through the top 30 wide receiver rankings for week 11 fantasy football, guys. And I am so close to hitting 7,500 subscribers, and when I do, I will be giving away lots of free FFN hats right here. So please go down there, drop a like on this video, and subscribe to the channel to show your support and help me hit 7,500. So let's go ahead and just start diving right through these rankings right now. So in the first tier, Tyreek Hill for the first time this season is sharing this tier with two guys. He's got two guys in here sharing this tier with him. Tyreek, AJ Brown, CeeDee Lamb. Now Tyreek I still have at number one. And there's a couple reasons for it. You can see on the screen his numbers. They're above the other guys that I'm about to show you by several fantasy points per game. And also, when it comes to the matchup versus the Raiders, this is a good matchup for him. I expect Tyreek Hill to come out of the bye week and show a lot more than he had been showing against tougher opponents the past several weeks. The Chiefs did a good job shutting him down. I don't expect the Raiders to do the same thing. Tyreek Hill is still clear number one for me. But AJ Brown taking on the Chiefs and CeeDee Lamb taking on the Panthers, fantastic. First of all, you can see both of their numbers on the screen right now. They're both incredibly close as far as fantasy points per game, targets per game, and basically everything else in between. Yards per game, they're 3 yards off each other. That's because CeeDee Lamb has been more explosive over the past several weeks, but AJ Brown has done it longer than CeeDee Lamb has. That's the reason I prefer AJ Brown, and especially in the Super Bowl rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs, I expect points to be flying in this matchup, and I want every piece of it. And CeeDee Lamb, of course, he's a great player. Of course, you're going to want him in a matchup versus Carolina, where he has done very well against inferior teams by a long shot. Carolina is a very inferior team. I don't care if it's in Carolina. I don't care if it's in Dallas. I don't care if it's in Ireland. I don't care where it is. Dallas is going to win this game, and the biggest part of it is going to be CeeDee Lamb on offense. Number 4, dropping down in the next tier, I've got Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamar Chase, back-to-back at 4 and 5. Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, nothing is in question for him. He is Keenan Allen, but younger and more athletic and more durable than Keenan Allen. Almost 11 targets per game, over 100 yards per game, 4 touchdowns this season, and 17 fantasy points per game. And he's taking on the Chicago Bears. It actually doesn't get any better than that, because Chicago is dead last in defending the pass. They're awful at it. They can't defend the pass. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't have questions on him at this point, honestly. He's just such a tremendous fantasy player, and he's done better this year than years past. Amon-Ra St. Brown in a fantastic offense, clear number 1 and clear number 4 on this list. Jamar Chase, though, against Baltimore on Thursday night, I'm really looking forward to this. Jamar Chase has been on the scale of relativity and what we expect from Jamar Chase. It's been a little bit disappointing, and that's only because we expect so much from Jamar Chase. So when you see him averaging 16.2 fantasy points per game and under 100 yards per game, it's like, for a player like Jamar Chase, you expect more, you want more. So it's a little bit disappointing, but against Baltimore, he's had history of success against Baltimore, even with a tough Baltimore defense. Years prior, he's had a lot of success against Baltimore. Now, I'm not saying that Baltimore's secondary is the same level it's always been. That's why he's number 5, because I think they're a tougher matchup. But in a Thursday night matchup where T. Higgins may or may not go, but Jamar Chase is going, he doesn't enter the week with any injury designation, I'm good with Jamar Chase. And then Justin Jefferson at number 6. The potential return is here. I don't know if he's going to, but I do know there's potential because he had potential last week. Now, what I will say about this is we need to monitor this situation moving forward, because what Justin Jefferson has said over last week was that he's not going to play again until he feels 100%. That's an important note here, because Justin Jefferson logged 3 limited practices last week. that would indicate he's not 100%. So we'll need to monitor that moving forward. But when he comes back, even with Josh Dobbs, I think that Justin Jefferson's going to be a fantastic player again. And he's taking on the Broncos, who have been better, but are still beatable through the air. And then Keenan Allen at number 7 right here. I love Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen obviously is coming off just an unbelievably massive game. And really what you're going to see with Keenan Allen, and what you have seen already with him this year, is that Keenan Allen does his best work in very close, high-scoring matchups. That was the matchup that the Chargers had versus the Detroit Lions last week. Now, the reason he's down behind Justin Jefferson, down behind Jamar Chase, down behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, when he's averaging, in some cases, more fantasy points than all those guys. He's averaging almost 19 fantasy points per game and the same amount of targets as all of those guys. The reason is because he's coming into the week injured. He's considered day-to-day, and I don't think that the matchup versus the Green Bay Packers is going to be as competitive and as high upside as far as scoring potential. Keenan Allen drops a little bit in these rankings just because of those two reasons right there. Stephon Diggs, I got to be honest with you guys, I don't know what to make of the Buffalo Bills right now. I got no idea. Buffalo is such a disaster. They're just a complete disaster zone right now. So in a matchup versus the Jets where they lost the first time around this year, they're 5-5 now. My gut would tell me that they're going to start winning again, but when you watch them, they look completely out of sorts on both sides of the ball and the coaching. And Stephon Diggs is coming off a horrible game. Awful game. So there's really not much confidence for me personally when it comes to Stephon Diggs right now. The only reason he's here in the top 10 still is because he's got a great target share, and that has not gone away. So Stephon Diggs, from a target perspective, still worthy to be up here, and because he's always a scoring threat. Davante Adams rising back up at number 9 here for the Las Vegas Raiders, taking on the Miami Dolphins this week in Miami. Davante Adams, I'm big on him again, and I really hope that you bought him all the weeks that I've been saying he was a buy low candidate. Davante Adams is about to come back. Davante Adams had 14 targets last week against the Jets. And head coach Antonio Pierce said that he's not stupid. He's going to target Davante Adams. Not only was that a shot across the bow at Josh McDaniels, who is now gone, that was also conclusion us as fantasy managers. He understands how good Davante Adams is, and he will start targeting him more. That's all we want to hear. Feel confident starting Davante Adams this week. Cooper Kupp is at number 10 here. Cooper Kupp is in a situation where it's really hard to tell what's going to happen, right? Because from reports that I've read, Matt Stafford is going to play this week against the Seattle Seahawks. That's obviously an upgrade from what they had with Brett Rippon. Now, they signed Carson Wentz, so even if Stafford doesn't play, the off chance he doesn't, maybe something goes wrong this week, I think it's an upgrade. Brett Rippon was awful. But the Seattle matchup is not fantastic at all. So there's definitely some drawbacks here with Cooper Kupp. But with the targets that, he's gotten over the season, obviously the past few games haven't been good. I still have a lot of faith in Cooper Kupp being a good fantasy option for you. Devonta Smith, massive jump this week, and it's only because he's taking on the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl rematch here. I want every piece of this offense. Every one of them. DeAndre Swift will be high tomorrow. AJ Brown was number 2. Obviously, always is. But Devonta Smith at number 11. This is only because I want every piece of the matchup. Now, you can see the numbers on the screen. They don't align with everybody else that you've been seeing. 6.67 targets per game. 4 touchdowns. 10.9 fantasy points per game. That's not good enough on a weekly basis to have him this high. But in this kind of matchup, I want every piece of it. So if you've got Devonta Smith, he should not be on your bench this week. Jalen Waddle against the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Again, I want every piece of this offense now as well. And the good thing about Jalen Waddle is that against the Chiefs, he didn't do much. He had 3 catches for about 30 yards. There wasn't much there for him against the Chiefs. The difference between the Chiefs and the Raiders is the Chiefs have a legit elite defense. They really do. The Raiders do not have that. And also, Miami coming out of the bye week, Jalen Waddle said he feels fresh as ever. That's a fantastic sign. That's all we can really ask for at this point with Jalen Waddle. So I got a lot of faith in Jalen Waddle this week. And I have the same thing with Mike Evans this week. Mike Evans at number 13. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're taking on the San Francisco 49ers. This is not an easy matchup by any means. No means necessary. This is a very, very tough matchup. But Mike Evans, when you look at what he's doing on the screen, and when you watch him in games, he's just so clearly the guy he's always been, which is a big play threat, the number one receiver on his team, and he's always a threat for a deep touchdown, and he had 150 yards last week against the Titans. Now, the 49ers defense looked much improved coming off the bye, so it's definitely a matchup downgrade from what they had versus Tennessee. But Mike Evans, to me, the big playability, the boom plays, the upside is there, and that's what we go for. We go for upside because we're trying to win fantasy football championships and get you into your fantasy football playoffs, and Mike Evans can help you do that. Number 14 and 15, back-to-back, Amari Cooper and Christian Kirk. Amari Cooper this week taking on the Steelers. The matchup is not as bad as it sounds. In fact, with Pittsburgh, since Minkah Fitzpatrick has been out, and it looks like he will miss again this week, this defense, this secondary has been not very good. And they had a moment there where they kind of stabilized things when they played Joey Porter, but they've been unstable again. The Packers receivers, Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, they just had two good fantasy games against the Steelers. Amari Cooper, as always, super unpredictable, but with the targets that he gets, 8 targets per game, the big playability he has, I like Amari Cooper this week. And then Christian Kirk, same type of deal. This is a target guy. This guy leads the team in targets. He's consistently the number one option for Trevor Lawrence. And this week, he gets a massive break in the matchup versus Tennessee. This is a great matchup compared to what he had last week, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. I'm big on Christian Kirk this week because the guy gets you targets and the matchup is there. 16 and 17, Ayuk, Deebo Samuel. This is really just one of those situations where they're both really good fantasy players. I can't decide which one to put first. I really can't because they're obviously taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That's a great matchup right there in and of itself. The other problem is the reason neither of them have huge ceilings is because San Francisco is so weapon rich. They can get everybody going. McCaffrey, Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, they can get everybody going in this offense. They're hitting on all cylinders right now out of the bye week against Jacksonville. They're going to do it again in Tampa Bay. Ayuk gets more targets per game, as you can see. But what you don't see here is the carries that Deebo Samuel gets. That is what keeps him close with Brandon Ayuk. And that's why they're both good options this week against a weak secondary. T. Higgins at 18. This one obviously is going to be dependent on if he plays. And from what I saw, I'm filming this video early on Tuesday morning. This is a situation where on Monday's estimation practice report, he did not practice again. So there's a very strong likelihood he doesn't play again. If he does play, you play him because I do think the matchup upside is there. And T. Higgins was starting to finally turn it on versus the Buffalo Bills a couple weeks ago. T. Higgins hasn't found consistency this year. That's why his ceiling is not as high as it would be if he had been around for most of the year. But against the Ravens, I think there's going to be a lot of points in this matchup. If he plays, you play him. Puka Nacua at number 19 here. It's really hard to identify where to put him, honestly, because he's got the same issues that Cooper Kupp has, except he has more. Quarterback issues right now, matchup issues right now, and also, how does it all fall with those two there? Puka and Kupp. Now, Puka has out-targeted Kupp on several weeks when Kupp has been back, but he's also had some massive fantasy bust games just like Cooper Kupp. This week against the Seahawks, coming out of the bye, I think they're going to make a very concerted effort getting the ball to their number one guy, which is still Cooper Kupp. But I do think that if Stafford plays, he will be able to support two good fantasy options this week, and that's why Puka's at 19. DJ Moore and Nico Collins are back-to-back here at 20 and 21. So DJ Moore, this is just a simple situation where he's the best house on a bad street, right? Chicago's awful. Chicago's just such a terrible team. They're taking on the Lions this week. There's nothing good about the matchup here. The only good thing that DJ Moore's got on his side is he's the clear number 1 wide receiver and the clear best playmaker on this entire offense. That's what he has in his favor. So maybe Justin Fields returns. I don't know. I've seen that Justin Fields may or may not return. So this is a situation where I say, just be careful. DJ Moore's just one of those guys you got to be careful with, while also acknowledging that he does have serious upside if Justin Fields is there. And then Nico Collins, this one's complicated. Obviously, I've been a big Nico Collins guy. For those of you who have been with my channel, you know I'm a big Nico Collins guy. Now, for those of you new, the reason why I like Nico Collins is because when you look at his numbers on the screen, he's very, very explosive with the opportunities he gets. 4 receptions per game and about 79 yards per game. And this guy has had some massive games. So obviously he misses last week. Doesn't do anything. Noah Brown has emerged for the past 2 weeks, having over 150 receiving yards in both of the last 2 weeks. Do I think that he's going away? I would have trouble thinking that Noah Brown's going to go away. That's going to lower the ceiling for Nico Collins a little bit if that's the case. And that's the ultimate problem here, is if Nico Collins plays, what is the division of labor between all of these guys? That's going to be a hard one to figure out here. But against the Arizona Cardinals, the matchup is ripe. The opportunities are there. They're rolling right now in Houston. So it's hard to not have Nico Collins in here if he's healthy, just based on what he has done. And really, even when you look back to the week prior, when Houston had Nico Collins and had Noah Brown, Nico Collins was out of that game a lot because he was starting to deal with that injury. So it'll be interesting to watch this week. I've still got Nico Collins inside the top 25 though. Garrett Wilson and Marquise Brown, back-to-back here. Garrett Wilson taking on the Bills. You know what's remarkable about Garrett Wilson is he's got one of the worst, if not the very worst quarterbacks starting in the NFL throwing him the ball. Zach Wilson, I discussed this on my Monday night live stream. There's about one guy I think that I would rank below Zach Wilson right now, and it's Tommy DeVito for the Giants. That's about it. And you can see what he's doing on a weekly basis right here. That may not look like a lot, but the numbers on the screen there show a guy that is just an ultra outstanding wide receiver. Clearly the wide receiver 1 because he's clearly the best wide receiver they've got, and that's not an insult. He's a fantastic player. The guy, over the past several weeks, he's had about like 70 to 90 receiving yards. Garrett Wilson's a phenomenal player. So this week against the Bills, who are just reeling right now, offensively and defensively, it's such a massive problem. Garrett Wilson remains a legit fantasy option because he's consistently targeted as the wide receiver 1, as he should be, and the matchup is not as bad as it sounds on paper. And then Marquise Brown, obviously last week it's a disappointment. First week back with Kyler, massive disappointment, right? Like that's not a good situation here. But Houston's secondary, very vulnerable. They've been giving up lots of yardage over the past several weeks. Now, they've also played very good quarterbacks over that time. And Kyler Murray, even though he won last week, I wouldn't say he looked his best. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Hollywood Brown this particular week, because 4 targets last week with Kyler Murray was not what we were looking for. I don't think there's an argument to be made, though, that he's their best option. That he's not their best option. He clearly is on as far as the wide receivers go. So I expect Hollywood Brown to have a bounce back performance here. I just don't know how high his ceiling is. That is still up for debate. Adam Thielen is at number 24. Adam Thielen this week taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Matchup is horrific, and the past several weeks, he's come back down to earth in a massive way. Now, the good thing about Adam Thielen and why he will retain a spot for the foreseeable future in the top 30 is because he's still consistently the wide receiver 1. Almost 10 targets per game, 72 yards per game, and about 14 fantasy points per game. He's still the wide receiver 1 in a bad offense. So that's going to cap his ceiling while also giving him a relatively safe floor. That's the best way we could put it. And this week against the Cowboys, there's not much upside, so be careful playing Thielen, but if you need a safe, steady volume play, Adam Thielen will do it for you. DeAndre Hopkins falling back down at 25. It's really hard, man. Like, DeAndre Hopkins is one of my personal favorite receivers over the past decade. I have always really liked DeAndre Hopkins. But man, after the performance against Atlanta, I had him ranked highly. And then this week, going into a game versus the Buccaneers, I thought it was going to be a great matchup. It turned out to be another dud performance from not only Hopkins, but the whole Tennessee Titans offense. Will Levis struggled past 2 weeks. Who knows how likely it is for him to rebound. And against the Jacksonville Jaguars, it is looking like it's going to be a tough matchup. Again, similar situation to Thielen. You can hang your hat on the targets that he's getting and also the big playability that he has. Tank Dell here at number 26. Again, Houston has become a team where multiple wide receivers are relevant in fantasy football. That's just the reality right now. So I really like the opportunities here for these receivers, while at the same time saying, I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Noah Brown shakes things up in a massive way. Does he retain the wide receiver 1 duties with Nico Collins? I don't believe so, but I don't think he's going anywhere either. I don't think he's just going to drop off the face of the earth. I just don't think that's going to happen. So Tank Dell, as a result, he's got his own role as more of the slot wide receiver. I think he retains his role, but again, how high is the ceiling really? But against the Cardinals, we will find out for sure. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett here back-to-back. I had to move down Jack Smith-Njigba because DK Metcalf, I will admit when I'm wrong, and I don't think that I'm wrong season long, but the past several weeks have been an indication that I'm wrong. 12 targets last week, 7 targets the week before, 14 a couple weeks prior. So DK's been getting targets consistently. Now he's not always capitalizing. That's also a problem still. But with that target share, he's got to be here. And Tyler Lockett, still last week, big play guy you see. Still capable of getting in the end zone. Smart player. This week against the Rams, they both definitely have to be inside the top 30 for sure, at the very least. Courtland Sutton at number 29. Courtland Sutton, man, he's just such a... It's so crazy. Taking on the Vikings, let me just tell you why I think it's funny. The reason it's funny is because Courtland Sutton, last year, I was so big on him. I was so big on him, calling him a massive steal in drafts. He absolutely just broke my heart. And this year, going into the year, I really didn't want anything to do with him. This is the year to have him. This is the year to have Courtland Sutton. Dude's got 7 touchdowns. That's a lot. That's a lot. He's basically getting a touchdown almost every single week. It's absolutely unbelievable. So the number you see on the screen, he got another one on Monday night. So Courtland Sutton, the only thing that worries me is that the guy's target share isn't that great. He's still averaging about 6 targets per game. And the offense's upside, even though they're running better, it's still really not that high. So if he doesn't get in the end zone, you've got problems here. But right now, I mean, it's hard to argue with someone who's considering him a touchdown lock. It really is. This week, taking on the Minnesota Vikings, matchup is there. Secondary's not great. So Courtland Sutton could be in line for another good performance. And then rounding out the top 30, I've got Deontay Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers falling back down to earth, taking on the Cleveland Browns. Not only was he a massive disappointment last week, but it was against the defense that he should have done very well in. But it really, not always his problem. Not always his fault. This offense, I've said it all year, it's a Mickey Mouse offense. That's just the reality with the Pittsburgh Steelers. You got to live with that with these types of guys here. Deontay Johnson falls in that category, and this is a much tougher matchup this week versus the Browns than it was against the Packers. So Deontay, target guy, still the number 1 wide receiver there. Should be fine from a target perspective, but upside definitely capped against the Cleveland Browns. And as I do every single week, at the end of every ranking video, I give you my favorite underdog wide receiver flex play of the week. And this week, this guy, you could argue, should be in the top 30, right? This guy should be in the top 30. I've got my reasons for not having him in the top 30, but it's a great underdog pick, and it's Terry McLaurin versus the New York Giants. Terry McLaurin, not only is the matchup tremendous, which it absolutely is. Matchup doesn't get a whole lot better than this versus the Giants. But also, Terry McLaurin, what you saw last week when they lost to the Seattle Seahawks was that Jahan Dotson was getting all of the praise for the past several weeks because he's a big play threat and he was also finding the end zone. Well, he went back to doing nothing. He had a goose egg. And then Terry McLaurin, with the upside, it's not there. Upside has just not been there. He's at most getting like 14 to 15 fantasy points in a half PPR format, but the guy maintains consistency every week. So if you take that consistency that he's been able to maintain, combine it with a great matchup, that's why he's the underdog flex option of the week at the wide receiver position. So let me know what you think of the rankings in the comments below and what questions you need answered for week 11 fantasy football. And if you want to see some buy low trade targets before week 11 fantasy football, click on this video right here.